Yeah, Dr. Barnabas, I mean, what kind of impact do you see these particular elections having on other elections that we're going to have, for a start? In terms of its conduct now.
Well, I think that the president, and also the president-elect now, has actually come out, and we have witnessed this in all his campaigns, stressing the fact that voters should have and should be allowed to go and elect leaders of their choice. And so it's really disappointing when politicians engage in all kinds of manipulations so as to undermine the electorate in our country. And so I think that politicians should learn from the president, particularly at the state level, because they are more vicious. They should learn from the president of the country and also ensure that they don't engage in anti-democratic actions that includes, violence, rigging of elections, abducting, INEC officials and even voters. That is the takeaway. I mean, we should try as much as possible, the politicians should try as much as possible to encourage their supporters to be much more temperate, and so that we don't destroy the foundation that has been laid. Let's build on it. The INEC officials that have come out to say that they announced certain results based on duress should have the courage. I mean, I can't imagine how INEC officials will come and say they announced people who didn't win elections because they were under duress. That alone is an indictment on their own capacity and integrity. So I think INEC should do something about those kind of officials and see how they can also, encourage the officials to do the right thing, to do this country justice by ensuring that they don't sign elections that are manufactured from government houses and wherever they are coming from, so that people can actually have the confidence that they actually go out there and that their votes will count when they cast their votes.
All right, so do you think that all of that, because we say that time and again that yes, we need to ensure that votes count, we need to ensure that we're democratic as we proceed in that process. Do you see that demonstrated enough for people to want to earnestly replicate what we've seen happen?
I think Nigerians must also be worried about the attitude of our politicians, particularly at the state and local levels, because that's where the problem truly is. You see, these politicians, most of them, they have nothing to do other than politics. So seeing that they will lose elections is not something that they take lightly. And so they go on. So let's not just blame INEC or the security agencies alone. The politicians, the voters, the level of viciousness, the level of desperation to win elections at all costs is second to none in this world. And that's the attitude, the political culture that our people already have. So if we're going to have a better election in the second half, that is the one that we'll be having by next week, it comes down to what and how the politicians, the actors, are willing to ensure that they build on the strengths, the gains of the presidential and National Assembly elections, and also that our security agencies also show honor, because one of the core values of security agencies is for them to show honor, integrity, to be courageous, to have the discipline to serve this country, and not the ego of some individuals who feel that they cannot lose elections for whatever reason. And that's the highest disrespect to the Nigerian people. So if we're going to have a better elections on next week and subsequent elections in this country, the politicians must change their attitude to winning elections. And then the voters also must be willing.
Isn't the action or the actions of the people going to be dependent upon how electoral or the election management body conduct themselves?
Yes. Like I said, it is not a one-sided thing. Successful elections happen when all the sectors involved, all the democratic institutions play their part. In sociology, there's a theory that is called functionalism. And that means that every institution has its role to play. And each time one fails to perform very well, it affects other institutions. Of course, INEC and its officials must be willing to do the right thing. But again, there's a political culture. Remember, the people working at INEC are Nigerians. In fact, some of them were actually given those jobs by politicians. And so once you have a system that is so compromised, whether it is INEC or security agencies, then it is difficult to control, or to do the right thing.
Let me get your point. Pardon me to bother you. Are you suggesting that since the job was given to them, in your words, by politicians, means that they're compromised?
Of course. Some of them are compromised. I mean, I have witnessed elections. In fact, my PhD thesis was on the manipulative actions of politicians and how that actually determine our election outcomes. And I've interviewed INEC officials. I mean, INEC officials at high, levels, and they've told me all these things. And I know, of course, that's what happens. Politicians also have owned up. The kind of things they do, they never say it. So the political culture is so warped, is so compromised, so dirty, that it takes someone who actually is truly refined to play that game. And so if we're ever going to get our elections right and do the right things, both on the part of voters and the election officials, we must tell ourselves the truth. What kind of country do we want? Are we looking for talks as leaders?
Right.
If that's not what we want.
Let me get to Mrs. Alabi on this one. Pardon me, but Mrs. Alabi, do you subscribe to that school of thought that they're compromised because the job was given to them by politicians?
Well, you see, I make my judgments based on facts and evidence before me. Before I would not, I'm not aware that these people are employed by politicians. As far as I know, it's an institution same as any other, and therefore individuals who are working there should be given the benefit of the doubt. I wouldn't just, broad brush say they are all influenced by whoever or whatever until I have some evidence. In looking at the way they've conducted themselves, I would say they were mindful of their duties and largely did their best in difficult circumstances. So for instance, within my team, like I said on Saturday, I have youth corpers who are currently serving in my team, and they were ad hoc officers. They were INEC officials. They weren't given those jobs by politicians. They were there because they were on national service, and they did their best in very difficult circumstances. And I think we'll do them a disservice to simply say that, they're somehow influenced. They're not. Where I do agree with my co-panelist is that there is a level of desperation on the part of the political class that is unwarranted. And the question is this a desperation to serve Nigerians, or is there some other motive that's driving this level of desperation to get into office? I also think that Torchlight should perhaps move away from the institution to the politicians a bit more. We should begin to hold them properly accountable for electoral malpractices. Too often, after the elections, we don't really see the follow-through. to ensure that everyone who has been accused of and participated in the game or without keeping to the rules of the game is properly held accountable. That is when we will begin to see less and less of these sorts of infringement. So I think the focus should be on the individuals who are known to have taken part in electoral malpractices, who are known to have done things that are against the rules, and holding those individuals accountable, one after the other. You will find that less and less people will be willing to engage once they know that they will pay the price for their action, and we will then have fewer of these sorts of incidents. You ask yourself, why is it that I can vote? I vote in London, I vote in Nigeria, and there's no question of anyone doing the sorts of things you find the political people, political class doing here. It is not because the people in London are better than the people in Nigeria. It is simply because they know that actions have consequences. And if they take certain actions, they will be held accountable. And that accountability, that check and balance, is what holds them in check. And that is really where we need to be focusing more in this jurisdiction.
Okay.
I keep saying that because the focus is more on INEC, and putting more and more, how do you say, safety checks to stop the action of those who do not wish to play by the rules. But I can tell you that no matter what we do, so long as we don't hold them accountable and they can, engage with impunity, then they'll continue to do so.